here's for tonight's instalment of The Snowman by Michael Morpurgo. Enjoy. Chapter 7. Downstairs, the clock in the hallway was chiming out the hours, and James was still awake every hour it happened. He heard everyone coming upstairs to bed, creakily. Mum and Dad together, then Grandma. And still the owl hooted. Still the clock chimed out the hours. James wasn't thinking about Father Christmas coming. He could only think of his snowman, and he had the strangest feeling that his snowman was thinking of him. He got out of bed and went to his window. It was a bright night, a white night. Under the moon and the stars, he could just see the big tree in the oak tree field. He could hear the owl hooting, and he thought he could just make out his snowman with Dad's old hat on top. "Good night, Mr. Snowman," he whispered. "See you in the morning." Back in his bed, he snuggled down. He still couldn't stop thinking about his snowman. Outside, the owl hooted again. Downstairs, the clock chimed again. "Morning will come faster if I go to sleep," James thought. "Then it'll be Christmas Day, and I'll wake up, and Father Christmas will have filled my stocking and brought my bright green mountain bike with the big fat tyres. And, best of all, I'll be able to go out and be with my snowman again. Grandma was right. He is magnificent. He is wonderful." James closed his eyes and pretended to sleep, pretended hard, so hard that very soon he drifted off and was lost in his dreams. It was still the middle of the night when he woke. He sat up and looked out of the window. There was the big oak tree out in the field, and there was his snowman. And James didn't believe it at first. You're not going to believe it either. The snowman was waving to him. Yes, waving to him. James rubbed his eyes and looked again. It was true. The snowman was waving, beckoning to him. He wanted James to come down and see him. James was out of bed as quick as he could, lickety-split, dressing gown on, slippers on. Soon he was tiptoeing past Grandma's room, down the creaky stairs and towards the front door. And, still tiptoeing so as not to wake Bertie, he was opening the door and running out across the snow, in his slippers. He hadn't even stopped to put on his wellies. He ran through the gate into the oak tree field, and there was the big tree, every branch and twig still covered in snow. But where was his snowman? He was nowhere to be seen. He had gone. And then from behind the tree came a waving arm, then a kicking leg, then a head, his snowman's head, the face still smiling, and still wearing Dad's old hat. Now the snowman was walking across the field towards him. Now he was shaking James by the hand. "All night I've been standing there and thinking," said the snowman, and his voice sounded so jolly and booming and deep. "I was thinking what it might be like inside your house. I've never been inside a house before." "Well, why don't you come in then, Mr. Snowman?" James said. "I'll show you around. But I'm not sure you'll fit through the door. You're so big, and we mustn't make any noise, or else we'll wake everyone up. And Grandma hates being woken up at night. It makes her proper grumpy." The snowman took his hand, and off they ran together over the frozen snow, across the garden, past the swing and the trampoline, towards the house, the owl flying above them on silent wings. The snowman had to breathe in very deep to get through the door, but he managed it, just. James showed him into the sitting room first. Bertie was fast asleep on the sofa, where he shouldn't have been. The last thing James wanted was for the dog to wake up. He put a finger to his lips, and the snowman did the same. They understood one another perfectly. And how the snowman loved the Christmas tree, all the glittering dingly-danglies, and especially the silver star on top, and the little Father Christmas underneath the tree. The one Grandma loved so much because she had the same Father Christmas under her Christmas tree every year when she was little. The snowman was trying to sit down on a chair. He tried Grandma's chair, too small. He tried Mum's chair, too small. The only one big enough was the chair by the fire, where Dad often sat when he took off his socks and wiggled his toes, which Grandma didn't like at all. The snowman sat back in the chair just like Dad did, but he didn't take off his socks or wiggle his toes because he didn't have any socks to take off or any toes to wiggle. But suddenly the snowman was not looking happy at all. He jumped up and backed away from the fire. James saw at once what was upsetting him. It was the heat of the fire. It was too much for the snowman. It was warming him up, and he didn't like it one bit. He liked being cold. He had to be cold. So James took him into the kitchen and opened up the lid of the freezer. It was just about long enough for his snowman. "Lie down in that for a bit, Mr. Snowman," he said. "You'll feel a lot cooler, a lot better." So the snowman lay back and snuggled down happily on his frozen bed made of bags of frozen peas and frozen broad beans and frozen apples and frozen black currants and frozen gooseberries, everything Mum had gathered in from the garden during the summer.